So welcome to the Mindful Mark Making class here at Element 3 Health. This class is designed, actually a couple of things. There's the element of relaxation that this type of work will give you, and also it is wonderful for practicing brush strokes. If you have a new brush and you want to try it out and some new papers, you want to just see how the brush works, this is going to be a wonderful exercise and practice for that. So normally I would have relaxing music, soothing music, and what would be really cool is even having some kind of music that would just say, like in the raindrops, having rain. That would be so cool. Some sound effects like rain, sounds of rain. But I'll tell you what the supplies are. Very simple. They are rice paper. I use this rice paper. You don't have to use rice paper. You can use typing paper. But I happen to have this, and I got it on Dick Blick, and it's this 9x12 sheet. I cut the sheets in half so that they're just this size, and that's a little bit more manageable size to work with when you're doing lots of marks. Rice paper is great if you don't have that. Typing paper, like I said, or watercolor paper, any type of white, just white paper. I'm going to use inks today, but also if you don't have ink, you can use watercolor. Let's just stick with one color so that we're not thinking about other colors. So if you have a black ink, a black watercolor, even a black pen, but I'd like to paint. So just having something just monochromatic, keeping it really simple. The ink, you can use any kind of liquid ink. You could use this is a cake watercolor. These are all just neutral colors. I think I have all these. So I have all these, one color basically in different tones. You can use even a pen. I think a pen would work. If it's a water-based pen, you can actually create washes out of that. Also, I have different brushes. So whatever you have in your stash, it doesn't matter what kind of brush you have, get all of your brushes out, because these are bare. This is not even a quarter of my collection of brushes, but I just wanted to play with these brushes because sometimes I forget how they are. I forget how they behave. So this is a good practice just to kind of see what your brushes can do, because there's just a practice. And then once you have mastered your brush, or you kind of gotten to know it, then whatever you make in the future it's just a lot more fun. Now, also I have some pens, keeping it, like I said, one color. So I have white and black, and in this I have a silver opaque pen. But these are optional, but it's just part of the fun of this, or the practice. So I wanted to show you kind of what we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do is we'll be doing something I call raindrops. Now, the raindrops can be as loose as these. This was done on the rice paper, and I'll do my demo on that. Or you can do raindrops that are more realistic, like this. The difference between these two, not only the way they look, this is much more spontaneous, the one on the right, because I have to go quick on the rice paper. I don't have a lot of time to hesitate with rice paper, because that's what I love about it. With rice paper, you have to be quick and spontaneous. Otherwise, if you hesitate, it just bleeds into the paper. And I'll show you why. This is watercolor paper. It's sized, so the color floats on top, and that gives you more time to move the water around. So this is much more slow. So it's really this would be a fun thing depending on what you want to do, spontaneous or slow. It just depends on how you want to go. So the first thing we'll do are the raindrops, and then after that we will do leaves. Now if we do leaves on rice paper, this is what you have to be quick, like I said, just little quick strokes, and I will demonstrate that. Again, on the watercolor paper, leaves can go very slow. So these are I started out with leaves, and then of course I started my drops. This kind of thing is just so much fun to do, and it just gives you this relaxation and calm. Then that's right. The third one we'll do is clouds, or cloud shapes, just basically little blobs. And on the rice paper actually shows every little movement I've made which is really cool. And on watercolor paper, it'd just be a much slower, and you can just have more control over the shapes. Just want to show you, this is what happens after you've done a lot of the layers. I added some gold ink, and I made circles. So we'll be doing circles as well. Lots of circles, and we'll do lines and dashes and just have some fun. So this is like another sheet that I finished, but it started out with a dry brush. I used a brush like this, and I just dry brushed, and I'll show you that real quick across the page. And after that, I made circles, and after that, I made little dashes. So there's really no drawing skill here needed. No, you don't have to, it's not like you need to know how to paint a tree or mountains or anything like that. We're just making patterns, repeated patterns, and it's just mindful and fun. So I'll go ahead, and I've got some ink poured, some black ink, and this is pretty bright. I can see that the light's pretty bright in here. So I'm going to put my first sheet down. Now, rice paper has a smooth side and a rough side. You're going to want to work on your smooth side, because that just gives you, it's a lot better to work on your smooth side. I'm going to use a little sumi brush. You can use a watercolor brush or anything you like. And I'll just put some color. I'll put the ink. I want to dilute the ink. That's what I'm trying to say. Instead of it being a solid black, which would be a pretty intense color, you can see how dark and dense this is. You don't need a lot of ink, because a little bit of ink goes a very long way with this. So I just make sure I dip my brush in plenty. I saturate it. I pretty much want to soak up as much as I can the ink, and this is a diluted, so it's kind of a middle of the road gray. And I'm going to just point my brush is pointed now. I can see there's a little hair on the end, so we don't want that. Okay, so to make the raindrops simple, I'm just going to go quick, and I just want to see and maybe vary these are looking like blobs, little blobs, which is kind of cool. But if I want to just see what happens if I can try to make it a raindrop, and that means I want it to be more narrow at the top than at the bottom. And I'm just varying I'm kind of turning my wrist a little bit. I'll add a little bit more black, and I want to just cover the whole page. If I go, see how quick I go now. Watch what happens when I hesitate. I'm going to just push it down. I'm going to hold it, and see, it just makes this. The longer I hold it, the bigger the shape is. So I'm just going quick. And I'm thinking of the song, "Raindrops keep falling on my head." It's just mindful and relaxing. So that I'll just cover the whole page, but I'm going to move on to the next one, just so you can see. I definitely want to cover that whole page, but let's move on. So the next one will be leaves. Now, I love leaves. Now, there's two ways to do the leaves. I'm going to demo it on the watercolor paper, and on first the rice paper and then the watercolor paper. So with the leaves, getting to know the brush, I want to just see what happens when there, that's kind of a leaf shape, right? So when you're playing, when you're trying, there's almost leaves. They almost look like sideways raindrops, don't they? You'll notice, and you might want to vary you'll notice, there we go. So as you practice, this is why it's so beautiful. You'll just keep doing it until you get the feel of what you want to achieve. I want leaves, if I can get them. There we go. So it's almost like a snap of the wrist to get that. So this is with a little, oh, I see why it's doing it. Different brushes have different behaviors. So I'm going to show you after I finish this little row. I'm going to move it. I'm going to take it, this brush, it's a little different. It's got a longer point. And you'll see the difference with the shapes. Now this one, you could see, I'm able to get that leaf shape pretty quick with the same movement that I did with the last brush, but just a different, it's a different brush, so it's going to act differently. So it's like getting to know your tools. It makes a big difference in any work you're doing, whether you're toll painting, you're watercoloring, decorative painting, anything. It's just getting control over, or getting to know whatever you're using, the tools. So I'm going to just do another row just for fun. I'm going to take a traditional watercolor brush. This one's got a lot of, this is a pretty neat brush on watercolor paper. I've never tried it on with Sumi ink, but we'll see what happens. Ooh, see, this holds, it's a different look. You can see it's like a, more of a, it can do it, but it's different. It's the same movement. I'm doing the same exact movement, but it's just going to come out differently. And the more I do this, the more you do this, at first you might not get that leaf shape. It might look like a bird. Who knows? It doesn't matter. It's just the practice. And what I love about Sumi ink is it has kind of a really interesting smell that gives you kind of calming. All right, so now I'm getting an interesting shape with this. Just, it almost creates a, see the way that looks. I think that's interesting. All right, one more brush just for fun. Okay, let's get this real fat brush. Just see this big squirrel. I got this a long time ago when I went to France, and it used to be my favorite watercolor brush, but there's so many new ones out that this is a little more difficult to control. So, but it's been a while since I've used it, so that's why I want to play with it again. See what it does. Here we go. Huh. So this one, I can get, that one almost shows like a line. You can see there's a line in the center of that. Interesting. All right, so now I've completed my page. And that didn't take too long. See how quick that was. There we are. I'll come back to this. It's something that, this is just the first layer. Okay, now if I do this on watercolor paper, the leaves, much different process with the watercolor paper. I'll even use some watercolor. You can use ink as well. So here I'll just pick up some gray. I don't even know which gray that is, but it's a pretty gray. I don't know if you hear the cat in the background. She's hungry. She wants to be fed. All right, here we go. So leaves. This is different. I have to go slow. Instead of going fast, I'm just going to take my time. I'm just going to bring, you can see because I have time. There we go, just that. What's nice about the sized paper is that since the paint floats, you can actually add, it's not as spontaneous as the rice paper, but this is much slower. So you can just go slow. And leaf shapes are very, oops, I put it in the ink. Here we are. It's the same thing, just repeat and get to know your brush and just have fun with it. The repeated patterns are very calming. You can see that. So that's basically what I did. Just practice, practice, practice. A whole page of leaves. The next one I have to show you, and we'll keep going back, are the clouds. The clouds, to me, are just a blast. I'm going to take, let's see, a fat brush, fatter brush. This one has more sheep hair, so it's going to be a lot more juicy. It'll hold a lot more ink. And with the clouds, I think I'd like to just make it more of a watered down grayish color. Oh, because it's rice paper, I'm just going to start just making a cloud shape, and I'm just going to see that. What will happen is after that dries, you'll see that movement I just made. That will actually show. Every little part will show. So I'm just going to do a little row of clouds. I think of the Kumomi when I do this. And what's wonderful about this is you can see how much paint this holds. That one I hesitated. These I went faster. So you can see the little bleed here. Let's just repeat. I love that. Just a little, if you can see the nuance there, when it dries, it'll even be more noticeable. So it's like you could get to see the innards of a cloud. Here's a black cloud. Just imagine clouds floating across the sky. And again, calming music. So there, I could go forever on this, as you can see, but you can see how that would look and how these dry with more subtle. You can see every brush stroke that I made, which is really neat. I'm just going to set that aside. And the next one we're going to make are circles. And this one I love because it actually gets you, it's more of a physical thing. That makes sense. I'm going to use this pointy brush. You can use a brush like this or a fine tip, anything, even a pen. Even a pen's okay with the circles. I'm loading it up full of ink, and with the circles, you want to use your shoulder. You want to engage your shoulder. So instead of your wrist, which is this movement, I think let's bring that movement. So lock your wrist and lock your elbow and just use your shoulder and it's a very nice movement. So just circle, and I'm hinging on my shoulder. I'm not doing it on my wrist. You can see it's locked. And let's see how, what I'm going to do is fill this up with ink and see how far I can go without having to refill. I'm just going to do circles, and they don't have to be perfect circles. It's almost like a dance. See how far it will go. Makes me think of happy faces or a crowd of people. It's starting to run out of ink, but it's still going, isn't it? Okay, just a little bit, because I want to go off the page a little. Kind of a habit I have is I like to go all the way outside the page, and that's why I have this black felt underneath. Okay, so I did the whole page, and that didn't take long. So I'm going to set that aside. And the next one to do, the last one is lines. And the reason you want to do lines, and it's a different movement, we're just doing lines, and they don't have to be straight lines. In fact, the more imperfect they are, the more interesting they are. So I think I'll start with lines going vertical. So just little lines, just bring them down. Maybe have a little more darker ones just for fun. This is a great practice to do if you are stuck creatively and you're just not in the mood to, you don't know what you want to do. You just want to do something. And this is a wonderful way to kind of jumpstart a creative session, even if it's not painting. It could be writing, it could be music, just something. And this keeps you in the moment. And if I slow down a little bit, the lines will actually get a little bit wider, and thicker. Last night I was doing this for quite a bit of, I think maybe for about an hour, and it just changed my whole mindset. I got much more calm and focused. So you see what I could continue and continue, which is good. But I won't. I'll stop here. So that, maybe in the next one on another sheet. Okay, so you basically start each sheet with something. But this one is another one. This is a quick movement. So let me just get this. There we go. So we're going to do dashes now. Dashes mean just kind of a quick, and you can go dashes all over the place. You can do dashes in all different directions. Just play with a quick movement and alter your directions. And you can make dashes kind of follow some motion. Just quick movements. These almost look like leaves. So I would cover the whole page, of course. So I just wanted to show you, so the next thing, let's say, so here I have my circle page. And I want to do some more marks. And I want to try this brush because this brush makes kind of a dry, it's sort of it's made out of a different kind of hair, and I haven't used it in a long time, so I kind of want to see what it does. I'm just going to put color in it. And what's interesting about it, when you get it wet, it doesn't, see how rough it looks? That's actually intentional. This, instead of being sheep hair, which is really absorbent, this hair is really rough, but it makes some interesting marks. I think what I'll do is before I go on the circles, I want to just try these marks on a plain sheet, see what happens. So here I go. See, it's kind of a dry, I love that. It gives like a grassy kind of, try it again. So I've just freshly loaded, there it is. You can see that that's a fun brush just for making texture. You can make the fabric. I love that. Simple and quick too. So that I'll have to remember. That brush I might like to use with my watercolors and maybe on a background in an art journal page or something like that. But that's why it's great to try different things with your brushes. So here's a wash brush, same width just about, but this is going to hold the ink a lot differently. So I'll show you how that works. I'll put it on a new page so we can. Now this one still might have a texture. It does. I'll be surprised. Now it might be more flat when I add more water. Or yes, exactly. Here we go. So wash brush. So that's really what I was looking for. I'll go back over that line. Here we go. If I just rotate my paper and just go this way. So I'm going to make really fun patterns. Okay. So you can see, and it actually kind of shows through on the other side. It's very absorbent, so that's why it's good to have a felt underneath. Otherwise, whatever you're working on will be really messy. So I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to come back to my circles. So I want to do some more circles, but maybe bolder. You can see how this can just go and go and go, right? So I'm just going to try a different brush, my little French brush, and maybe just put it on really heavy. There we go. And getting low on ink, and I have to add more ink. What I could do, if I wanted to just to really jazz it up a little bit, I've got this gold ink. It's not really gold, but it's black ink infused with gold. And again, Dick Blick has this. It's pretty neat stuff. What I love about it is it will bring a little contrast. So there's the gold, and it's just juicy and fun. That's how I made that one sample you saw. So just circles over circles, I've got another thing. With the layers, it really makes a difference what I've got going here. Another thing I could do is add little dashes. Just make little, like spokes. And now I feel a lot more, in the past half hour since I've been doing this, I'm feeling a lot more confident with my brushes, my brushwork. So I could go to a watercolor painting or a drawing or anything else, and I'll probably have a much better experience because I've practiced. I've practiced with these brushes. I'm just kind of freeing my mind. I'm not thinking about, oh, what picture am I making? I'm just enjoying this. Absolutely. Make little X's. And the repetitiveness will definitely create a sense of calm, and also your skills. You'll improve your painting skills and drawing skills. Now, back to this. Now, this isn't dry yet, but I wanted to, anything that's dry, I'll work on something that's dry real quick. And then we'll have we'll stop the camera. I'll stop and I'll talk to you for a minute, and then we'll see what we can do from there. Okay, so here is this one. This one's dry. And if I wanted to add lines, this is another mindful exercise. It's just add your little lines to your leaves, and that will make them look more realistic, even if they aren't realistic. And if your leaves are really dark, you can add the white pen too. And I could, of course, go on and on and on and on and on. If you want to add texture into the raindrops, you can actually make little dots with, this is that silver pen. And I think this is just a lovely pen. And I'm able to just kind of layer and highlight. These look like raindrops now. So the patterns or the textures are becoming much more interesting. Here I'll just add that silver, maybe just to one side. Some more line work. If you don't have silver, you can use white, you can use any color. I really didn't like that line, so I'm just going to cover that up. Or the black line. Here we go. You can use white pens to make, let's see, try that on another one here. You can do that on the rice paper, just so you know. The paper is pretty amazing. Like in this case, I did it with the silver pen. But if I want to show you that the white will also work, if I want to draw white lines, it will float enough on top of that paper because it is the smooth side of the paper. You can also, on rice paper, use a pen, but just go quickly. Here, like here, if I outline the cloud, if I go quickly, it works great. If I go slow, I'm just going to hold it. The slower I go, the more thick the line becomes. Which is really kind of cool. You can make really neat dots that way. See how I made a wide dot just by going pretty slow. So it's getting to know your tools and just enjoying the moments of creating and making patterns. Now, the question, you're probably wondering, what do you do with all this paper, right? What do you do with all this? Well, a lot of times, if I do a different size, I'll use it as a background or I'll tear it to make collage elements for an art journal page. Or if it's a square, I'll fold it. Or I can actually do encaustic over this. There's just a lot of things because rice paper is great for collage. It's thin and it tears easily, so you can get really neat. You can see, I get some pretty amazing edges. If I wanted to make a scene and then just glue that onto something, you could see it's just, there's so many things you can do with it, even just little bits of these. So I like to save all of my little paintings or my little practices because they can be used in other things. So I'm going to turn on this thing here.